Anne-Marie, our online support community for later in life lesbians is about to have a major upgrade. So, do you want to tell the nice people what's going on, or is it still a secret?
Oh, we are so ready to share this great news. I'll be happy to do the honors. We have found a new home online inside of a platform called Mighty Networks. We've created a space where we can build community, offer group support meetings, host workshops, offer courses, share resources, offer live events, and it's all in one place, which is so convenient for you and convenient for us. Think of it as your online neighborhood drop-in center for us later in life lesbians.
Well, that sounds fantastic. But wait a sec. Is this just for women who are coming out or who are in the messy middle?
That's such a great question. This space will be for all later in life lesbians, no matter what stage you're in, from curious and questioning to navigating the messy middle to being fully out. When you subscribe, you get access to all kinds of support, no matter what stage you're in.
Amazing. So, what are you calling this later in life lesbian drop-in center? How can we find it?
We are named Authentically Us, and we're officially launching on February 10th, but you're free to check it out and sign up now at AnneMarieZanzal.com.
Okay, well, we'll drop that address in the show notes. That's www.AnneMarieZanzal.com. And hey, I'll see you inside of Authentically Us. I can't wait.
Me neither.
Hey, queer friends and allies. Welcome to Season 6 of Coming Out and Beyond, LGBTQIA Stories. Here's your host, Anne-Marie Zanzal.
Hi, this is Anne-Marie Zanzal, and I want to welcome you back to another episode of Coming Out and Beyond. I am very excited today to welcome to my show, Joan Alexander. Joan, welcome.
Hi, Anne-Marie. Thank you. It's good to be here again.
Yes, it is good for you to be here again. So let me tell you a little bit about Joan. Joan is a spiritual director, supervisor, and educator who lives in Canada and offers various kinds of experiences to seekers, including Labyrinth, Enneagram, and Dreamwork sessions, mostly on Zoom. She has been practiced for over 10 years and welcomes individual and small groups into spiritual direction. Joan serves on a faculty of several formation programs, teaching and supervising students in this ministry. She facilitates workshops and webinars on topics such as spiritual accompaniment with LGBTQIA community and allies and spiritual trauma, happening, hurting, and healing. Joan currently serves on the board of directors of Spiritual Directors International. As a proud member of the LGBTQIA plus community, she has shared her personal story on this podcast before. Since that episode aired, Joan's partner has come out as non-binary, and this has deeply impacted their marriage. Perhaps she'll return for another episode on this part of the journey. But here and now, we're going to explore spiritual direction and, as an add-on bonus, dream work. So, Joan, so much I just said. So this is Coming Out and Beyond. And so if you want to hear Joan's personal story of coming out later in life, we will attach a link to that episode. If you're really excited and want to go find it on right away, it's on season 3. But Joan, tell me, what is spiritual direction?
Oh, Anne-Marie, you've started with the most difficult question. It is so challenging to define what it is that I do in this practice, and not just myself, but this is something that's offered all around the world. It can also be called spiritual companionship, and it can look very much from the outside like a counseling or a therapy session. You meet with someone that's a trusted professional. You share your story. You talk about whatever is not working in your life. So all of those things are similar. Where spiritual direction varies from counseling and therapy is that when you meet with me or someone like me, I do not see you as needing to be fixed. You may share things that are broken in your life, And those are beautiful places for us to engage together in and to see where spirit, the divine, God, whatever language you use when you come. Someone just came to me with the language around he who cannot be named.
Mm-hmm.
So you come, and that's the place where we ground ourselves, and that's where we begin to engage with each other.
Mm-hmm.
It can be a one-off, like one session. Something has happened to you in your life. You've been traumatized. You've been impacted in some way by a religious community or a spiritual community, and you need to process that. It can be a one-off like that, or we can meet regularly. Some clients of mine have met with me for years. For
Mm-hmm.
years.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just say one more, and then it's back over to you.
Don't worry, go for it.
There's something about that, about what I've just shared, that can feel quite intimidating for a new person to come in. You know, to have an hour or more with someone that's not really structured on getting well, or it doesn't have all the boxes that we want to tick off in therapy or counseling. In spiritual direction, having that 1 hour to explore things like dreams, or
Mm-hmm.
to walk virtually or in real time on the labyrinth,
Mm-hmm.
to decide what your Enneagram type is.
Mm-hmm.
Those kinds of things are all spiritual companionship.
Mm-hmm.
So does that somewhat answer your question?
Well, absolutely. But I'm wondering, so as someone who comes from a religious faith tradition, and now this is like a total 180 here, or definitely a fork in the road. I am curious, as someone who identifies as a lesbian, right? Someone who identifies as a lesbian, how has your spirituality and how you view the world, the lens in which you view the world, has changed after your coming out process?
Yeah. What's coming up for me is that are several things, but mainly, Anne-Marie, that I really looked at all of the theology that I journeyed with for decades, you know, as a practicing Anglican in the Anglican Church of Canada, as someone who worked in that church, I accepted all of this, you know, I accepted everything. And even scripture, you know, if we use that kind of language around biblical text, for instance, I accepted it all. And then when I started to come out in my face, I started to revisit all of that and kind of pull things apart and reject so much of it. It was like I needed to reject it before I could take back some of the pieces that still resonated for me in my heart, or that still worked for me in my outward life, you know?
Well, yeah, what I'm hearing you refer to is sometimes what we call deconstruction in a more,
Absolutely.
but it's deconstruction with construction. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like you're remodeling a, I don't want to say a bathroom, but remodeling something. You have to tear things apart
Right.
and then decide how you're going to put it all back together.
Actually, you know, I really like your bathroom analogy because it's a 50s bathroom, like maybe pink and green, and it has the basics. It has everything we think we need. But then we fast forward to now, you know, this life now, and I need soft colors, and I need soft, you know, rugs on the floor, and I need soft lighting at this age and stage.
Mhm,
You know,
mhm.
so just as an example of saying, what is it that I long for now? And what can I give up from back then?
When people come to you, I want to specifically focus on our community. So the clients, when people come to you having been deeply hurt by the church, but they still believe in something greater than themselves, no matter how they define that, where do you begin with all of that? And I think one of the hardest things for people who've been deeply hurt by the church is for them to also start to trust somebody that is aligned more with I believe you're more aligned with the mythical side, mystical side of faith, not mythical, mystical side of faith. How do you start working with them? And a follow-up question is, what type of person comes from the queer community comes to seek spiritual direction? So maybe reverse those questions. What
Yeah.
type of person comes, and then how do you get started, and how do you start working with them?
So, yeah, the first part of your question is who comes, who shows. Often it's someone who's had one or more instances of trauma. They've been rejected. They've been for various reasons. For example, and maybe this is because this is my own example, not being able to be married in their religious community, the same gender person that they love and want to spend their lives with. It can be something more subtle, like someone who attends a yoga class in a church basement, so a Christian building. They see different icons on the walls, and they're on their yoga mat and they're thinking, this is a disconnect. Why am I crying? Why am I reacting with anger? Why am I getting the hell out of this building and never going back? That's one person that I'm describing very loosely that came to me early on.
I can understand that because religious symbolism can be very triggering for somebody.
Absolutely.
So if you are going to a church basement to do yoga, and it's probably a lovely church because they're offering yoga in your basement, but like seeing those symbols can really like bring a lot of stuff up for us.
Yeah, for sure. So let's stay with that person, and we won't even give them a gender. That person comes and they may have been referred to me or someone else, as being a safe place or a brave space, as Brene Brown says, a brave space. So that person comes, they've never been to spiritual direction before, but they just sense that they need someone to walk alongside them. So they come. So what do I do with that hour? The first thing I'll do is welcome them, like you welcome us when we meet with you, and settle them in. Often I'll use some type of an opening, like an open metta, like a loving kindness, not religious words or language, something like, welcome to this space, welcome, welcome. And then I ask them, and you may recognize this, my friend, I ask them to tell me their story.
Yeah.
And there's something I'd like to add to that. When I first studied spiritual direction years ago, someone that was teaching the class said something once around not reacting, not being angry, not crying, not just simply being a presence. And I kept to that for years. The stories in our coming out community, Anne-Marie, sometimes I do cry. How can we not, right? And so I've left that on the wayside. And sometimes I will say to that person who's deeply hurt, deeply emotional, deeply, deeply, that I'm crying with you. With you. Yeah.
That's actually, honestly, that's how I always chaplained. I was a chaplain, as you know, I was a chaplain for years. And, it's funny because sometimes I hear people talk about chaplains doing things that chaplains should never do, like trying to convert people on their deathbed and stuff like that, which is so far beyond professional chaplain should do and inappropriate. But I remember like trying to define my theology behind why I was doing being a chaplain. And it was because I just wanted to walk on the road with you for a while of where you are in your suffering. And I am come from a Christian tradition, I'm raised Catholic, and floated around different areas of Christianity in my life. But mine is really modeled on Simon of Cyrene. He is the one that helped Jesus carry his cross. So my role is to go in, help you carry your burden, whatever it is. It doesn't matter if you're Christian or not. I know as a chaplain, we're trained to work with all people of types of spiritual beliefs, and even people who don't subscribe to any kind of spiritual belief. Though I argue that because they do, but they don't. There's, but I don't want to go down that path right now. But what it's really interesting is that, like you, it's like my job in this world is just to be there for people when they need somebody to be there for them. And I feel like my coming out I've always been a compassionate person, but my coming out allowed me to let go of a lot of my quietly held judgment. Yeah.
held judgment.
Like
Yeah.
I would never let you know that I might have been judging you, or this is years ago, not anymore. But after I came out and how hard it was, and experiencing people not understanding and experiencing people shutting me out of their life and stuff like that, I learned that, and there was no amount of explaining I could do, or did I want to waste my emotional energy explaining this to people? Because inherently, if you're straight, most likely you will not understand the queer experience in the world. And so when I came out and it was so challenging, I just sort of let go of like my judgment I had of people. I have worked so hard to just do that. And that was really one of the greatest gifts of my coming out experience, letting, people are just trying to do the best.
Yeah.
They really are. Even people that we may disagree with, deeply with, most people are just trying to do the best they can.
Thank you so much for sharing that piece of your journey.
Yeah.
Your journey. Yeah.
So after you've seen our person and they've shared their story, what happens next?
So then we try to identify what spiritual direction could look like for them. And again, just looking at, an hour once a week or once a month or as needed. So there's lots of flexibility here. Looking at an hour can go by like in a heartbeat.
Well, I know I've had spiritual direction with you.
Yes, I have. Yes. It can also, like for a person who's new, it can feel like forever.
Yeah.
So that's where, as I said, we bring in some different types of modalities that can support our yogi, their journey. And so I may ask a question like, do you know what a labyrinth is? Have you ever walked a labyrinth? And if the answer is yes, well, let's spend a session on that. And if it's no, let's spend several sessions on that path. The Enneagram is it's a powerful tool. And many of us know what that is. I am a baby Enneagram.
So just in case people don't know what an Enneagram is, could you explain it?
Yes, it's a typing modality where you take a survey and you receive a number. The numbers are 1 through 9, and each of them has a piece attached to it that may or may not reflect who you are, your personality, your way that you show up in the world. It's amazing work. And I am a baby Enneagram facilitator. So very quickly, I will refer someone if they want to go deeply. But if they just want to do a survey and we talk about and we listen to each other, then I'm right there for you. So there are things like this that are available to make that hour seem more manageable. Those that have been in spiritual direction before, who value silence in their life, who may want more poetry, more readings. I do want to add to this though. Very rarely does anyone ask me to pray with them.
Yeah.
Whether they're Christian or any other type of faith belief, that doesn't happen very often. But when it does, I try.
So as part of being a Yale Divinity School student, Berkeley Divinity, which was part of Yale Divinity, which is Episcopalian, they offered spiritual direction. So I got spiritual direction when I was going through Yale, and it was free. Which was wonderful, because it was part of a grant or something like that. What I loved, I have never, ever, ever, ever prayed with a spiritual director.
Really? So it's not just okay.
And in my chaplain life, I never, ever, ever prayed for somebody unless I would ask. I would say, would you like a prayer? Or they would ask me. But very few times have I ever, because it is very difficult oftentimes to offer prayer for somebody else in a non-communal situation like you're in church community, because how I pray and what I offer may not be what that person needs in that moment. So prayer is a very, I'm on like a lot of chaplain groups and stuff, and or in minister groups online. And a lot of times people are like, the chaplain came and didn't pray. And I'm like, well, because we've been trained not to pray unless somebody wants that. Or, a lot of times when people are dying, like are actively dying, people do want prayer. So that typically, people do want prayer at that moment. But when you're visiting somebody who's in, rehab for a broken hip or something, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It's just, but it's always very, it sounds like in a way it's a really respecting with spiritual direction, it's really respecting where the person is.
Absolutely.
And giving them exactly what they need, not what you think they need.
Yeah. So true. Well said. Yes. I have a question for you.
Sure.
Around prayer. I'm not changing the subject, but I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
We may not use prayer language, but do you think that this conversation that you and I are having, and that those that are going to be watching and listening may consider this to be a spiritual experience?
Yes.
Yes. I do too. Yeah, I do too.
Because spiritual experiences can happen in all kinds of ways that often surprise us. For me, a lot of times in my work, for the last almost 20 years, some of my most intense spiritual experiences have been one-on-one with patients or with family members. And my CP supervisor, and CP is clinical pastoral education. It's how you become a chaplain, how you can, and usually you have to have 4 units to become a CPE, to become a chaplain in the United States, in a lot of the places in the world. And my CPE supervisor, her the gentleman who I can't remember his name, which is the I thou, and he is a rabbi. And I will find it and put it in the show notes. But it's where it's the theory of like, I am here and you are there. And then there's the in-between. And what exists in the in-between is deeply spiritual, often a God moment, like, or a greater, I'm going to say a love moment, And that has been very profound for me in my life. And I still experience that today with clients and stuff like that. But I'll say that when I was in hospital and hospice, it was much more because people are in crisis then. So they're much more vulnerable and they're much more, people I work with are in crisis too, but just a different type of crisis, So they're not contemplating the end of their life or that they might be dying, they're just, it's just
immediate.
It's this stuff they have to work through. Yeah. So I'm curious. I just want to ask, what are you, a 2?
I am an Enneagram 6, which is the loyalist.
Aren't they the 7s are the fun ones, right?
Yeah. Let me hold on. I have to have it in front of me in order to speak with any level of authority around this. What number did you say? The 7?
The 7 is the person who's the fun.
The enthusiast. That's
so
right.
6. What do you think I am? I'm just curious.
My goodness. Okay, let me look down for a moment. I think, and I base this on a couple of things I know about you, but let me just throw it out there. I think you're a 2, a helper.
I'm an 8 with a very strong 2 wing.
Hallinger. Whoa, why did I feel some fear there for a moment?
Well, I want to tell you something very interesting. So I did the Enneagram when I was in CPE, and I was a 2. And then since I went through CPE, even before I came out, I've taken it several times since then, and I am an 8. And I do believe that I was conditioned to be a 2.
I agree with you. I believe that too. You read those questions and you responded in the way you thought you should.
Right. And then as I got to know myself and I did all this self-work, and the 8s, they go from Adolf Hitler to Martin Luther King. You know what I mean? So it's like, a very healthy 8 can be a wonderful person, right? It's when you're on the unhealthy side of being. And when I started in chaplaincy, I would just say that my caregiving came from a place of, I'm supposed to do this because growing up in a chaotic home, I was an adult, what do they call it? A parentified child, very young. And so, I mean, that's what I was trained to do. And then learning not to take care of everyone has been the biggest challenge of my life.
I can imagine. Yeah. You
So
don't.
something else you do is dream work.
Yeah.
Now this is fascinating. We can have a whole entire episode about this. I am fascinated by dream work. So basic definition. Okay. How did you get it? Basic definition. How did you get into it?
So I studied at the Hayden Institute,
Mm-hmm.
spiritual direction, and a component of our studies was Jungian dream work.
Mm-hmm.
I am not a Jungian analyst.
Mm-hmm.
So what I call my offering is this Jungian flavored dream work. So we're going to take the knowledge, we're going to take all of the archetypes, different things that may show up in your dreams or in your life regularly, and we work with it, explore it together. So Jungian flavored dream work, that's what I offer.
So what Joan is talking about is the work of Carl Jung, and it's spelled Jung for those who are not familiar. And he was my therapist when I was going to become a CPU supervisor, and then I dropped out of that. But he was my therapist at the time. I love Carl Jung. I think a lot of what he speaks about really speaks to me. I do believe in the archetypes and all those things. Like, had a crisis of faith when I realized that the archetype of the martyr, it made me realize that about Jesus. And so I was like, wait a minute, So I really love his work. He's problematic. I mean, he's from the late 1800s. I mean, that's when he started his work. He's worked through the mid 1900s. He was a contemporary of Freud. Some of his stuff is problematic. He was a womanizer. But there's some good pieces. You like Carl Jung.
Yep.
And so tell me, how did you get into dream work? You got into it at the Institute, and tell me more.
So like so many people, when we have this interest in something, in my case, it was dream work, I started to explore my own dreams.
Mm-hmm.
We start from the beginning and kind of work our way out in so many types of interests, if you will. So there's that. So I started with my own dreams. And one of the first places that I came up against Jung was my work around gender. Carl Jung, as you said, he practiced until the mid-50s. And at that time, there were two specific genders. And so I came up against that. There was a lot of learning for me around that piece, but I didn't leave it all behind because I really love the archetypes. I love in particular, let me share this with you. I was so intrigued back then when I was studying and to this day in collective dreaming. Are you familiar with that piece?
Well, I'm familiar with collective consciousness. So is it that off of that?
Yeah, I would yes, it does. Yeah, that someone on the other side of the planet is having a similar nighttime dream to mine. It's fascinating to me. And I've expanded on that type of work around how we are in the world today and all the crises that are happening and all that we live with. Who is dreaming like I am? For example, I have so many dreams about doors, like actual doors in walls, or in buildings. And I'm hearing people in my practice that are saying they're dreaming about doors. I haven't shared that with them public or in any way, not publicly or one-on-one. Fascinating. So is there someone in Australia, for instance, who is also dreaming about doorways and thresholds? And what type of wisdom is there for us collectively in our dreams?
So what do doors and thresholds signify in dreams? And a really basic question. Because when I have a really perplexing dream, I will go and I will look it up. Like a symbol of teeth falling out. And that's one I've had over the years. And then something will pop up what it symbolizes in the dream. How do they figure that out? What? Wait a minute. Okay, all right, and sometimes it's pretty consistent across various websites and places you go. So for example, your teeth falling out. Okay. people like figure it out that what do you know what that means? I can't remember off the top of my head.
I can tell you what, based on my education and my experience, what it means.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I can really do. And then, yeah, we can Google it. We can go to AI. We have all of those different. Let me share what comes up for me.
Mm-hmm.
Every part of you as the dreamer, every part of your dream reflects a part of the waking person.
Okay.
That doesn't mean literally that your teeth are going to fall out.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
I mean, that may be your first thought, like, oh, I need to get into my dentist. So I need this, right? And that's, that's right up here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important. You need to take care of your oral health, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we go down a little bit deeper, yeah, what do those teeth represent in you, the waking dreamer? What is it that, because every part of you, your hair, your arms, every single part of you, your life is a reflection in your dreams and in your waking life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So let's stay with your teeth for just a moment. Teeth as children, our baby teeth come through. Sometimes it hurts a little bit. Sometimes it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
They fall out.
Mm-hmm.
How do we recognize that in your waking life?
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, your molars, all of your permanent teeth come in next. They're stronger. How do you take care of that part of yourself? That strong enamel, if you will, piece of you, the waking dreamer. And how do you neglect, perhaps, care of something that's so vital to your health and well-being?
Wow, Joan, that's pretty.
I know. I love this stuff because it's back to you, right? You're the dream. You have all this wisdom. I'll just ask you a question or two or three.
Okay.
Okay. So let's stay with the teeth if you're not too grossed out yet. Okay.
I'm not grossed out. It's just, yeah.
Okay. So perhaps some of your teeth have fallen out in your dream. Perhaps it's only a few. Perhaps you need to find some way that this is reflected in your waking life to find a bridge, like a dental bridge, or braces. What kind of hold you steady?
Well, for me, the dream is like you go in your mouth and like one falls out and then you go touch the other one and then the other falls out. And then like, you're like, oh my God, they're all falling in. Right. And also being conscious of it. Well, I guess subconscious of it. Like I'm aware that the teeth are falling out and I'm looking at them and they're falling out. I haven't had this dream in a while, but but it was one I used to have, fairly regularly.
I wonder, Anne-Marie, knowing you as I do, knowing some of your journey, that this dream of the teeth falling out represents your coming out journey.
Probably. Yeah. I mean, it was before, I had it a lot before my coming out journey. I haven't had it in a while. I don't think, but yeah, it's always been really, really, I love what you said. I mean, that is very, very profound and I really appreciate it. So I'm going to have to think on that. I have another question for you. My wife has the most weirdest dreams of all times. Mine are like the typical ones. Hers are like, oh, I was riding a Tyrannosaurus Rex. I mean, like we both laugh about it because she's like, she tells me her dreams and I'm like, I don't know. There's nothing I could give you here. Like, so when you have really outlandish dreams, like something that just like riding a dinosaur, like, I'm curious, what would you say like riding a dinosaur represents? And she loved dinosaurs when she was a child.
Did she? Okay. That's what's coming up for me. I'm remembering my own kids and how they both went through these dinosaur phases. So I know the different names of some of them still. So first of all, have your partner reach out to me and we'll delve into a session. But just briefly around what are these seemingly outlandish things that we dream about? And in this case, her, I think that's your partner's gender or pronoun.
Yes, she is. Her. She is a her. She will always be a her. She's a girl.
So that dream, if we look at that dinosaur as being a part of her waking life, what is represented here? Very strong hindquarters. And I don't necessarily mean literally.
Right.
In her life, right? very strong, very grounded on the earth, perhaps smaller front legs, something that's more gentle that can hold smaller things. Her eyes, how does she see the world? Is that strong, I was going to say trunk, but that strong neck of that dinosaur in her dream, what does that represent?
That's
Yeah.
yeah, I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. That's
Oh,
pretty.
I wish she was here. We'd get some answers.
Yeah. So the door and the threshold. Let's go back to that. We left people hanging because there is somebody listening right now who's saying,
Okay.
door.
All right. So this is just a couple of questions I would ask a dreamer if they bring a door dream to me. So tell me about this door. What is it made of? Is it made of wood or is it made of something else? And I'm asking questions because, as you know now, I'm getting to the waking piece of this dreamer. Does the door have any type of a window in it that we can look in and out of? Is there a lock on the door? And this is in my humble opinion, this is the best question. Does the door open inward? You grab the knob and you pull the door in, or does it need to be pushed out? That can have a lot of insight or not, And then the last piece, just for our purpose here, is what's the threshold like? Is it one of these really old thresholds, like in a sacred temple, for instance, where all the feet have walked over it barefoot, and it's like it's wooden, but
Sort
it's
of worn away a little bit.
Yeah. Those kinds of questions are what I will ask about a door dream. And as I said, and I'm only one of many people that work with dreams, but the fact that dreams are coming up in my little corner of dream work, I'm so curious whether they show up in others as well.
I had a dream once, like in the middle of my coming out, and it was it was two very famous women having sex. And it was really interesting to me because it wasn't like two women that they're both beautiful women, but they're not the type of women I'm attracted to. So I was like really curious in my dream. And then all of a sudden, one of them had a baby in the middle of the dream. And I think I might have been working with a spiritual director at the time. And I told her about it. And she said to me, it sounds like you're trying to bring something forward. Your baby represents new life. And the sex, and like, I don't think she knew anything that was going, like, I don't think I had told her yet, but I found that very profound.
Yeah.
Because I was like, really like, holy shit. Like it was really profound for me that I was having this dream and, two famous women that are beautiful, but not I'm particularly attracted to. And then one of them has a it's just, dreams can feel so weird sometimes because you wake up and you're like, what the heck was that about? Any advice for people who are curious about this and they're saying, but Joan, I don't remember my dreams.
Yeah.
Can you give us some advice on how to start being able to like integrate your dreams into your conscious life?
Who replies to that question, Anne-Marie, question. One is there are ways, you can drink more water before you go to sleep so that you get up more often. And then you are more likely, you get up to pee. You're more likely to remember a dream if you come out of it suddenly. Have a journal beside your bed on your night table. And when that happens, just write down a few words, especially first thing in the morning. Is there anything? So that kind of advice comes through often. But the other piece around people who don't remember their dreams, and I hear that often, I will say to them, do you daydream? And if they turn like kind of like rosy cheeked, I know what they're thinking. They're thinking, or I think I know, I shouldn't assume, but I know for myself. Do I daydream? Yeah. Do I call it fantasy? Yeah. If I'm honest, I do. So do I fantasize about, all kinds of things? Yes, I do. let's do this kind of work with your daydreams and with your fantasies.
Mm-hmm.
See what comes up.
Mm-hmm.
You may think you have more control over those waking experiences. And yeah, we probably do, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. Talking about fantasies in our coming out world, that's
Mm-hmm.
something we may never have been able to do.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely not. Yeah.
right. And maybe we still don't. I don't
Or
know.
we did it, for example, with our spouses, our male spouses. It was often reduced to the sexual act or something like that in those fantasies, because often that's, you do tell your partners things. And a lot of women talk to their partners about that stuff, but then it gets so reduced to just like that, the sexual act. It doesn't really reflect what people are trying to bring forth in their lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
All right. So Joan has agreed to do a mini spiritual direction session for me so we can sort of show you how it works. So, as those of you who listen to this podcast all the time know that I said I'm going to start focusing on my more spiritual side of life in the podcast this year because I have really struggled to show myself as a minister. Like I just started using the Reverend on my Facebook. I never used it before. And so there is a part of me that I know experiences shame around being a minister. And it is hard for me to show up fully as a deeply spiritual person who also has a very strong religious background in the queer world, even in the non-queer world. It's really hard for me just to show up like that. And I'm not sure what's going on. Like I'm aware of it and working on it. This is my year to work on this. And maybe we can take this offline too at some point because I'd love to talk to you about it more fully. So what do you think?
Yeah. Well, what I think may be important here, but what you think is way more important, my friend. Way more important.
Okay, so ask me a question.
So if we use some of the questions around dream work,
Okay.
let's do that. So number one is, what would be the title of this dream? Just don't think about it too much. Just throw something out there.
I'm scared to show up who I am as who I am.
I'm scared to show up as who I am.
Mm-hmm.
What is the setting of the dream?
I'm drawing a real blank. I don't have a setting per se.
That is an answer in itself. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Third question is, where is the energy the highest in your dream? And energy is a big word, I know. Where's the energy the highest?
The energy is the highest. And I'm not sure if you're talking about negative or challenging energy or wonderful energy where you feel really like loved and held.
Where did you go to?
Challenge.
Okay.
The challenging energy comes around, it comes around being seen as somebody, I'm going to really say it out loud now, who, I'm going to say what I'm thinking, who fell for that malarkey. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. Are you ready for a few more questions?
Okay.
All right. Take a breath. It's okay. Are there any other people that you see in this dream? And if so, just for our purposes today, what gender are those people or that person?
Well, the first person I thought of when you mentioned it was the priest from my growing up years, and who I was friendly with. And he's a man, obviously.
Gender. Okay. Yeah. Is this dream asking anything of you? Is there an action that this dream is asking of Anne-Marie?
That I need to show up and stop being afraid. Because I may not be for everybody, but there are people out there that need to see someone who is literally Jonah of the Christian religion. You know who Jonah is. Jonah is the prophet, and he's the prophet, the most very short biblical book of Jonah where he's called to be a preacher and he runs in the opposite direction. to the other side of the known world at that time. And I relate so much to that. I relate to that in my Christianity, not in my spiritualness, but definitely in my Christianity. My Christianity is part of the spiritual part of who I am, but it's not everything. So when I used to have to write things for ordination and stuff, I would call myself a Catholic evangelical congregationalist yogi.
Wow.
So that's how I would call myself but I'm not. And what I have learned over the last couple of years is that once I freed myself from the constraints of Christianity, I am much more at peace. How do I explain everything I just said for people to understand? And do I need to do that?
My response to that wondering is you are already doing that. You are continuing to do that. Let's give those who receive it the agency to hear it in the way that they need in the moment. And if they need to reject what you're saying, let's just hold them lightly and trust that they may return. They may return.
Well, I would love to dig into this deeper with you. So I'll be making an appointment after
Yeah, that's right.
But thank you for indulging me. And thank you. And we just really sort of wanted to show some things that people may bring to them, to Joan. Sometimes your questions will be more complicated than that. Sometimes your questions will be less complicated than that. But that's okay. So Joan is going to do something wonderful for our followers, for the people who follow this podcast. So Joan, tell me what you would like to offer them.
So I currently offer a dream session, as a standalone, or it's in the context of spiritual direction. So what I'd love to offer to this community that I see in many ways as my community, the Coming Out and Beyond community, a reduced fee for a dream session. Would you like to know what that could be, Anne-Marie, at this time?
Absolutely, sure.
So my current fee for a dream session is $75. And then you come away with a dream map, with responses to the questions that I've asked, and with some type of knowledge, if you will, around how to go forward in your dream life. So I'm offering that for $50 US for a session. Now, having said that, and those that will check out my website will see that I offer a sliding scale. I offer pro bono for those in specific communities. Reaching out is the first step. Reach out to me and then we'll see what we can do. Exploring dreams is such a beautiful experience.
Yeah, it is really cool. I was actually, it caught me by surprise. I didn't expect it to be like that. So it was really lovely. So Joan's information, so we are going to attach this to the podcast. So we will be sending out the offer the Sunday after this podcast airs. So if you would like to receive the offer and all the information, you can sign up for my newsletter in the podcast, and then we'll be sending that information out. But Joan, if people want to reach out to you directly, how do they find you?
I'm hearing that if you Google Joan Alexander, Spiritual Director, I come up.
Yeah.
So that's one way. That's one easy way. My website is live, and it's joanalexanderspiritualdirector.com. And I hope that by the time this airs, my new website will be available for all. But however, it's still there as it is. We'll see what happens. But please reach out. And if anyone does, if you use my Calendly to book in for a complimentary or other session, please put a note in that you found me through Coming Out and Beyond.
Yes.
That would be wonderful. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
Joan, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's my
pleasure. really,
pleasure.
really fun. I would love for you to come back sometime. Maybe we could get a couple of people that would want to come on and just talk about their dreams.
That would be great.
And also, too, I know that you have written about how your partner is now non-binary and how that has really changed some aspects of your marriage. So that happens a lot in our community. So Joan's going to be back in the next 6 months or so, and we'll talk about that aspect of her life. we have often very many complicated things going on at the same time. So,
So true.
yeah.
So true.
Well,
Yes.
Joan, thank you so much. I'm so glad you joined us today.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
You've been listening to Coming Out and Beyond, LGBTQIA+ stories with Anne-Marie Zanzal. New episodes of the Coming Out and Beyond podcast drop every other Friday. You can tune in at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and at annemariezanzal.com. Be sure to hit subscribe when tuning in so you never miss an episode. And for more resources, articles, videos, and a free downloadable guide for coming out later in life, visit annemariezanzal.com.